Let's jump into the medical school application timeline with some tips from my experience that you'll be able to use in yours. The first thing you gotta do is take a deep flapping breath because, as they say, the only thing that's harder in medical school is getting in. The second thing you gotta understand is that once you get in, it will probably be the most satisfying feeling you've ever had. All right, cats, please like and subscribe and let's jump into it. January to April of your application year, you'll need to write your personal statement, making sure you're using Grammarly to spell check everything that you do. Don't trust your writing ability. You need to do this early enough where you can confidently finish what you've written and then hand it to your friends and family to proofread it for you. Next, request and obtain letters of recommendation using Interfolio. This will make the process much easier. Biggest mistake students make here is not having their letter writers submit early enough. Tell your letter writers that the deadline is a few weeks earlier than it actually is because they won't write it on time. Second, ensure they include the nuances of writing letters, which is pretty specific. I will put some links below so that you can refer to this. Next, register for the aamc preview exam and with your pre-health committee if you're fancy enough to have that, which I didn't. Now, you're gonna wanna study diligently for the preview exam. Next, consult the MSAR to confirm each medical school's specific requirements, including courses and secondaries. Don't neglect the out-of-state versus in-state acceptance rates, as well as assessing relative competition based on the number of applicants that are actually trying to get into a specific school. Finally, and hopefully, take your final MCAT by May 19th. May 19th is the last day to take it without delaying your application. I would avoid taking the MCAT at least 6 months before May to ensure that you're privy to your scores while you're applying. After all, med schools will be able to see all your MCAT. Lastly, write work and activities sections. I'm gonna post the link right here so you can figure out how to do that, and write your MD and PhD applications if that's what you're into. All this stuff should be wrapped up by April of your application year. In May, the number one thing that you need to do is get your transcripts ordered. Oftentimes, there are processing problems with transcripts. Get it out of the way so that you don't have to think about it anymore, and that will be really nice to have less things to think about during this process. You're gonna wanna fill in the AMCAS academics and demographics sections, which are also just kind of plug and chug. You want to send in the final copies of your personal statement and work and activities to friends and family to collect final advice. Read it out loud to ensure that it flows well, and then finish this by mid-May. You need to light a fire, metaphorically, under your letter writers to ensure that they have them all in with the correct format. This should really be done by the end of May, guys. You don't want to be screwing around with this in June. Start and finish your medical school list. Aim to have this done by May as well. Don't do this until your activities and personal statements are done. And don't delay in the process of starting your secondaries either. You need to have your secondaries completed far before the essays actually come out and are sent to you, or you will drown in secondaries. Remember, there are many online lists of all the secondaries that have ever been published by medical schools, and most schools almost always just repeat the secondaries year after year because they're about as lazy as we are in actuality. I will link a website with all the medical school secondaries with their prompts below. During my application period, when I applied to around 30 schools, which I think is a reasonable amount, it seems like a lot though, I wrote about 78 pages of secondaries. That's relative to your personal statement, which is 3 pages or 4 pages or something like that. That shows just how much writing you're gonna have to do for the secondaries. Don't underestimate it. You can expect to be writing around 80 pages. Next, let's jump into June. Because you're super ready, having followed all the previous steps, I want you to submit your application to AMCAS at the beginning of the month of June. If you aren't ready to submit by the end of June, then you should probably wait till the next application cycle. Don't get caught in the late group, cats, or you'll suffer a far worse chance of getting in. These are rolling admissions. You'd better be spending a lot of your day writing your secondaries. You aren't out of the woods just yet. I honestly didn't start my secondaries early enough and it was a nightmare. Get them done. I know you're tired, but you gotta push through. Heads up. Lots of medical school students don't send secondaries to their friends because they feel bad having to send these to their friends after having already sent them their personal statements and their activities. But I promise you, you should send them to at least 4 people. Or at least you should send the most repetitive essays, which you'll start to see, to at least 4 people. A lot of schools are going to reuse essays that other schools are using, so just get these essays down and get these specific repetitive essays to people. Lastly, in June, look in the AMCAS system to ensure that your letters of rec and your transcripts are received and approved and that everything looks good, and then bask in the contentedness of having that finally finished. In July of your application year, your secondaries come in the form of websites, which you will log into. You're gonna paste those essays that you've already written into the sections on the websites where it's going to list them. Some essays will be new and you need to complete them on the fly. Make sure to plug everything into Grammarly as you complete it to make sure you're not spelling everything wrong or anything wrong. If you're spelling everything wrong, don't go to medical school. Go back to kindergarten. kindergarten. Read over your secondaries before you submit them to ensure you put the correct school names if you are submitting an essay that's repetitive to different schools. I had a friend who did this, and every single school got something that said how excited he was to go to Stanford. He actually got in somehow to a school. Somehow the school was like, do you know what you did? Next, after your secondaries or while your secondaries are being completed, I want you to start doing mock interviews. You need to start doing mock interviews with your friends, your family, your cat, yourself on camera, anything to get yourself better at this process. The way you do this is you find lists of questions online for medical school interviews, and you start randomly asking yourself these questions or having your friends, family, and cat ask you these questions, and then you respond to it on the fly. You'll get better with time. Record yourself doing it and you'll see that. I'm gonna put a link below on how to actually do interviews, and don't worry, you're gonna be fantastic in front of all of these admissions committees, you little superstar. July and August, that's what you're gonna be doing. Now you're gonna be entering into September till around April. This is the next phase of your application. During this time of the year, you're going to be interviewing. You're gonna be well-dressed and you're gonna be well-trained, of course, because your cat's gonna give you excellent feedback. You're gonna send any update letters or essays into school secondary websites if there are any changes with your application that they need to know about. Send in letters of intent or interest depending on if you get put on a wait list for a particular school. This can help your chances of getting into a given school. If you're on the wait list to a school, then attend all the mandatory and the non-mandatory stuff that you can in order to get acquainted with the admissions staff and financial aid office and whoever is going to be talking about you, and also just med students. I want you to try and find out what you did wrong from med schools that actually rejected you, which is sad, but it happens and it's going to happen a lot, so get used to it. From October to May of your application year, you're going to consider the finances of all the schools you actually got into. Are there scholarships you can apply to at each school? Most financial aid departments will be able to point you to resources that help you afford the stupid cost of medical school in this antiquated and concerning nation that we call the United States of precariousness. Now you need to visit all the schools you're thinking about going to. You're going to research the areas you'll be living in. Are there any dangerous areas? Are there any really nice areas, too expensive areas? And make sure that these places are a good fit for you as well as your family. You're going to want to start checking out places to rent or to buy in areas. Remember, a lot of med schools have cool co-op housing for pre-meds, which is kind of dorm style, and will introduce you to a lot of other pre-meds who are going through this process and get you connected with a lot of doctors and expand your web. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you checking out this video, and please like, subscribe, and let me know if you have any other videos that you want to watch. Much love, cats.